Recorded live from Portland, Oregon, it's the Transamorous Network podcast. Let's get it on. Welcome to Transamorous Network. I'm Perry.
I'm Remy.
And welcome to the show. Today, we have
an amazing guest.
He's really amazing. Tommy Matt, I believe.
Tommy Matt.
From Chicago, originally from New York, joins us. He has been featured on several outlets on the internet about his trans attraction.
Yeah, he's written a few articles.
He has.
Mm-hmm.
And he has some amazing insight into what it's like to be a trans attracted guy. And so we're welcoming him to the show this week.
So thrilled to have you. Welcome, Tommy.
Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Really good.
Doing great. Thank you.
Glad to have you on the show today. It's been kind of a long time trying to get you on the show. We've been eager to talk with you because of your prominence in on the internet and how you express your trans attraction and how open you are about it. For the viewers and the listeners, Tommy came out maybe 2 years ago, 2015. Oh, almost 3 years ago. Talking about his trans attraction in several media outlets, including Salon.com and Huffington Post and Psychology Today, as
articles, right?
Yeah, news articles talking about his trans attraction because he felt that was necessary, and we're gonna dive into that. And
I commend you.
Yeah,
that's for damn sure.
Highly commendable. We're gonna talk with Tommy about that and his background and his experience with dating trans women, in hopes that what Tommy's going to share is going to be useful for men like him. Well, men who share the same romantic interest, but unlike him, are in the closet, feeling shame,
right,
embarrassed. And as a result of that shame, in the closet state and embarrassment, are creating realities for themselves where they just can't seem to get the satisfaction that they want as a trans attracted man. And hopefully this interview will help these men become more comfortable with who they are.
That's what we're here to do.
Yep.
Try to help.
So Tommy, you're there in Chicago. You're gainfully employed. You have some education. You are doing some really great work out there. So you're not an idiot. You're not some sort of living in the basement in your mom's house playing computer games. You have been with trans women before. So why don't you give us some background give us some background on who you are and how you identified your trans attraction.
Okay. Well, I'm from upstate New York. I've been in Chicago for about 3 years now. And I guess I came around to realizing my trans attraction when I was an exchange student in Thailand. There's a very visible and open trans community in Thailand. And while many of the other exchange students treated them as if they were taboo or strange, I saw nothing strange about them and was attracted to trans people, just like any other woman. But it wasn't until I actually got into a short relationship with a trans person there in Thailand that I realized the urgency for me to speak up.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this was right around the time that DJ Mr. C scandal happened. I don't know if you remember that, but they called it a scandal.
Mm-mm.
But basically, the scandal was that he was just with a trans woman. That he slept with a trans woman. And I didn't really understand why that was scandalous to sleep with a trans woman. And it was kind of a wake up call for me that I was by no means closeted about having dated a trans woman, but I wasn't speaking up about the treatment of trans women and their partners either. And so, that, just seeing how media figures talked about that so-called scandal, seeing DJ Mr. C cry and say that he let his family down and that he let his fans down was just really, it was just really hard to watch because, what kind of message does that send to the trans person that he was?
Right. And to other men who might be attracted.
To other men who might be attracted. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I didn't know it was that he went to that extent. Apparently, according to what you wrote in your articles, he also quit his job.
Yeah, I think he was in. I don't remember the name of the radio station, but yeah, he was a pretty prominent figure in the hip hop community, and I think he resigned because of this so-called scandal.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to take you back, if you don't mind, to the earlier comments you just made describing your path, and ask you, where did you come from? That, like, what was your upbringing like that allowed you to not feel that being attracted to trans women was something you should be ashamed of?
I think that came from the fact that I was already very interested in social justice and equality, human rights, things like that at the time. So I guess I came to a realization that if, I was speaking out about all of these other things, but not something that I was directly tied to, that would be hypocritical of me.
And so you're one of those people who lives their truth in every aspects of your life. And so if you're about social justice in like the workplace or in society, then certainly your personal life should match that. Is that what's going on there?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, I at least try to live like that.
Okay. And so when you were in Thailand, and so you said you had your first relationship with a trans woman at that time. So I'm trying to get in your head for the benefit of the men that are watching the show. So you're in Thailand. As you said, I've never been to Thailand, but I hear that the transgender community is not only pretty large, but they're all over the place. And so how did you go about meeting this person, and when you first how did you first discover this person was trans, and when that happened, what went through your mind?
So I met her at a bar while I was out with my friends. I kind of suspected that she was trans, but I didn't know for sure. We actually went on 3 dates before she told me she was trans, and she was very nervous. I think that was another kind of wake-up call moment for me that, like, people shouldn't have to be nervous to tell you that they're trans. And
hello.
Mm-hmm.
She was, probably nervous for 2 reasons. One is a fear that I would reject her because she's trans, but also, unfortunately, there's a fear of violence. Which
rejection and safety.
Fear that trans people deal with every day is that just by coming out to someone that they've been seeing and dating or romantically involved with, that man could explode into a violent rage because he somehow feels like that is a threat to his heterosexuality or his masculinity. So trying to remember what the original question was, to be honest.
I was just asking you, how did you meet her, and then what was going through your mind when you discovered that so you said that you kind of figured that she was transgender, and then you actually found out she was transgender. Was there, I guess I have to go back to my original question and ask, did you have any concern about your own sexuality as a result of finding yourself attracted to her? Or did you, let me just end the question like that.
I wasn't so concerned about my own sexuality. I guess I was comfortable with having a more flexible sexuality. I guess, I don't know. Hard question to ask. I guess it was liberating for me, in a way. I felt like I could be myself, and I don't know, I think it's exciting in a way to discover something new about yourself if you realize that your sexuality is more flexible than you thought it was before. That to me is exciting. Learning something new about yourself.
That's really fascinating, because as when I think about men, I don't imagine men, and this isn't about masculinity or your orientation or your. This is nothing about you, Tommy. I'm speaking as
spit it out.
Yeah, I'm speaking from the perspective of the men that are watching the show. When I think of men, I don't think of them being excited about finding out something new about themselves that would set them potentially on the outside of mainstream society.
I think I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. But I also see that there's a lot of differences in different groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing like Tommy's level of like self-acceptance.
Yes.
I'm seeing more and more common in the younger generation. So people who are in their, mid-20s, early 20s, even more. And then, you meet, we had a couple high school kids I was working with recently.
Mm-hmm.
And just, how comfortable they are and, who they are at that age, high school age, senior in high school. You know what I mean? It's kind of mind-blowing because, I remember in my time, and you think my parents' time and how it just, you go back, it opens. With each generation, there's a new opening of self-acceptance and willingness to get rid of the old bullshit that our parents and grandparents, you know what I mean? It's people are seeing, at least here on the West Coast. It's hard for me to say anywhere else because this is my experience, But, yeah, just more and more open people are about their self-acceptance. In the different interviews that we've done, you think in the younger men that we've interviewed and the older men, the experiences are extremely different, right? The older gentlemen have had this long time standing situation of trying to figure out, does this affect my sexuality? Does it mean something different about my sexuality? It took me a long time to come around to this realization. Whereas we've got people in their 20s who are like, yeah, I met this trans girl. I really liked her, and I was cool with it, and so we started dating. And it's very different.
It is very different, and we have one of the most recent men that have reached out to us, Tommy, is 68 years old, and he was asking if there's a chance still for him because he has not been able to, because of his stories, he's not been able to find a trans woman that would be interested in him, and so I get it, and we've spoken with men from 68, this guy, all the way down to how old was...
Well, we've had another, silver fox in our interview.
Yeah, but I'm thinking on the other end of the spectrum, I think we've gone as low as 19, was it?
Something like that. Yeah, pretty damn young.
Yeah. So and you're right, because the men we've spoken with who are on the lower end of that scale have been more... They haven't questioned themselves in their trans attraction, whereas the men who are my age and above are still kind of having that trouble.
Right. Well, it's the younger generation where we're seeing within school more people identifying non-binary.
Yes.
Even if they represent in a very binary way, they identify in a non-binary way, or they at least want you to identify them in a non-binary way.
Yeah.
They don't want that label of being a girl or being a woman being on them. They don't want to have to carry that burden.
Right.
At the festival I was just at, my friend's child, born female, and let everybody know that she identifies in a non-binary and would prefer the they, them pronouns, which we all had a certain level of struggle with because we know her from as a little girl, and she's still a little girl to us. She's still only in middle school, just getting ready to go into her first year of high school. But they would prefer that. And so we all were struggling and working on that and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
It's also a new paradigm.
Right, yeah. And it's in a community too.
That.
Well, it's in a community where, the Queen this year was a trans woman. There was a hand fasting that happened. That was 2 trans women. So it's a community that's very open to that. But even still, it's that shift for all of us, something changing. But I'm seeing that in that younger high school age, a lot of them are identifying in a more non-binary way because I think on some level they're trying to break the system.
Yeah, and so when you think
that's what they're being born into, you know?
So when you think about men who are not of that age, the ones who are having trouble, probably the ones who we all, Tommy, are trying to help.
Right.
Because the younger ones obviously don't have these issues. They have issues
they have
with
different issues.
Yeah, the issues are different. They have issues trying to find a trans woman, not being comfortable with their trans attraction.
Right.
But the older guys are having trouble just being comfortable with their trans attraction. And then on top of that, they're having trouble finding the trans women that match their desires. So Tommy, I need to ask you, how old are you?
I'm 25.
See, I knew it.
Okay.
I knew it.
Okay. So would you agree with what Remy just said? All the things Remy just said about youth and acceptance?
Yeah, and I've definitely noticed a lot of the same thing. Most of the men who have reached out to me to talk about this sort of thing have been older. And then I feel like some of the younger people don't even need to talk about it. They're just already comfortable.
Yeah, it's like that's not the conversation they need to have. It's not about I've been struggling for years with my identity and what this means. Like, right? Our older, 40 and older, at least from like where we are at this point, 40 and older have had that more so that experience.
Yeah.
Below that, we've got, in the 30s, we have a mix of things, but people who are in their 20s and younger, the experience and what they're needing is very different.
Very different.
It's almost like they might not be able to relate fully to the older guys because it's a different paradigm. It's a different shift between them. You know? There's one thing, their attractions are the same, but their understandings about it, their feelings about it, their lives about it are different.
Yeah. So Tommy, when you had this experience with this trans woman, and then at the same time you saw what happened with that DJ, is that what kind of catalyzed your activism? I mean, clearly you were activist in other aspects of your life because seems like that's who you are in the world. But did that catalyze this transamorous activism also?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I guess it was a lot of things, but that was a big thing. I think another very influential thing for me was watching this music video made by Kokoma. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, but she's a trans woman and a singer. She made this incredibly moving and heart-wrenching song called There Will Come a Day. And the music video shows a developing relationship between a trans woman and a cis man. And the trans woman comes out to her partner and says that she was born or that she was assigned male at birth. And her partner responds with violence. And, it's very devastating, the music video, but I do encourage people to watch it because it's moving, and it was yet another thing that kind of motivated me to speak up. Because, men need to be having these conversations. Men need to know how to not respond violently when they perceive that their sexuality or their masculinity is threatened. Because so oftentimes it's not an actual threat to their masculinity or whatever. We have this very toxic idea of what masculinity is, and when that gets challenged, men just explode. And I don't know, I guess just talking more amongst ourselves, amongst men, might help move us in a better direction, but something needs to change because there's a lot of very hurt men out there who don't know how to act, don't know how to treat people, and, people like trans women, especially trans women of color, bear the brunt of that.
There was an instance that you described in one of your articles where there was a group of men who were catcalling this trans woman, and my understanding of catcalling is it's a compliment, even though it's brutish when men do that to women. But obviously, the men found this trans woman attractive, but somehow relating this story, you said they somehow found out she was trans, and the catcalling turned into physical violence on the trans woman.
See, and that all too often, in my personal experience, happens is they're attracted, and then however they realize or find out that you're trans, if they're around other people, their own friends, boys, homies, whatever, then the possibility of the violence now has been escalated and multiplied, 100 times.
Yeah.
When I was assaulted, it was a similar type situation. They approached me thinking one thing, and when they realized, it got violent.
Yeah. Her name was Alon Nettles, the woman that I mentioned. Do you mind if I share a quote by Bell Hooks?
No, please go ahead.
I feel like this is very relevant to this sort of thing. This really resonated with me, but Bell Hooks, a feminist writer, says that the first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem. And so that kind of resonated with me, what you said, that or like sharing your experience about how you've noticed when men catcall you when they're alone and that they find out that you're trans, there isn't that kind of sense of panic that they have when they're in a group. And, they don't want their friends to find out that they found a trans woman attractive.
Right. So, exactly. It's exactly it.
Rituals of power assaulting your self-esteem. I don't know. I just found that quote very powerful, and I think it brings up a point that, men have their own struggles and their own problems that we have to deal with in this society, but the solution to that is not this men's rights activism that so many confused men are clinging to, that is very misogynistic. The solution is embracing feminism, because we need to realize that although we have our own problems are still coming from patriarchy. The people who are hurting us are other men.
Yeah, through the reinforcement of the patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
And so it is in our best interest to unite with women and trans women and non-binary people and fight for feminism.
Right.
That would make our lives better, even cis men's lives better. That would allow us to not be put in such suffocating boxes.
Yeah. So let's work
humanism. That's what we need.
Absolutely.
Humanism.
So I didn't tell you this before, Tommy, but we're going to take a break because we're right at about 30 minutes, and we like our shows to go the individual episodes to be about 20 minutes or so. So we'll take a break, and we'll be right back for part 2.